Satan, we're gonna tear your kingdom down, Lord Jesus. Oh, Satan, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Oh, yes.
Lady Mae is busy working with staff at the mansion for the pre-revival event to host the revivalists as well as other guests that are coming in from out of town. Bishop Greenleaf goes to pick up a close dear friend of his, Pastor Lionel Jeffries, played by Tim Reed, who, if that name sounds familiar, is because he played the father to Tamara Mallory on Sister Sister. So I'm going to call this section In the Spirit. So basically in the car ride back to the mansion, we learn that Pastor Jeffries is a recent widow. He's having difficulty navigating life without his wife, who often packed for him. He didn't know where the luggage was. He didn't know how to put his kit together. And one of the suitcases were filled with seashells that caused him to just sit for hours and look at the shells that she had collected. So he's obviously missing her. Okay. And Bishop tries to keep it light in the car, and he says, hey, things are rough for us for a while, but we're progressing from that. And then as they are driving, they hit this billboard with Jacob and Basie advertising Triumph 2. And of course, Pastor Jeffries doesn't miss that. He's like, is that Jacob up there? And, with great disdain and contempt, Bishop Greenleaf said, yes, that's my son. So when they come back to the mansion, instead of it just being the butlers and the servants and what have you, the house is packed with guests as well as servants, and champagne is flowing. And there's all this buzz about Jacob. One particularly loud and boisterous, and I feel was done in a messy way, played by the best person though, J. Anthony Brown, Reverend Richard Agnos. So Reverend Agnos is talking to Charity. He's popping all these jokes and talking about, well, I love the bishop. He tries to clean it up afterwards. But he's basically saying, y'all better check his bloodline. Is he really a Greenleaf? Like, really? Is he over there with Basie? And he's going on, and Charity is, ha, 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 ha. She's not responding to anything. But it's an awkwardness, and, he's playing off the tension with laughter. So if anyone were to get defended, hey, I didn't mean anything by it, I'm just cracking jokes. You know how I am. Watch out there now. But anyway, I'm going to go into, well, before I do that, let me finish up the pre-revival celebration, or what I call In the Spirit. You have Grace and her friend Pastor Rebecca in her quarters, and they're drinking champagne. Sophia comes in, says, I'm not judging. And then she said, well, can I have a sip? And Grace says no. She said, now I'm judging. And they're reminiscing about yesteryear when they were kids and the things that they did. And then you have Charity and Kevin. And Kevin says, do you think you want to be with me anytime soon? She's like, you want to have sex with me? He's like, yeah. And why wouldn't I? And it's like, oh, well, yeah, maybe we can do something tonight. Meanwhile, you have Lady Mae and Bishop and Pastor Jeffries together, off in a more quiet space. And Bishop leaves them for a moment to get some champagne. And Lady Mae tears into Pastor Jeffries. And we find out that, Lady Mae didn't want him to attend. And he said, I wasn't going to attend, but your husband called me. I had to be there for him. I'm not here to cause you any harm. And so they didn't have any further discussion because, of course, Bishop comes back with champagne flutes. And they are making a toast. And they are making the toast, and you know, Bishop's hand shaking very badly. And later on, Lady Mae addresses that with him, and he basically says, I want to be on my top of my game. And she says, you're not on top of your game when you're shaking like that. And he's like, well, I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. And she said, no, you embarrassed yourself. And he basically said, the medicine makes me sick. And so she said, see the doctor. And that was it with that. The next segment I'm going to talk about is Too Little Too Late. And that's really going to tie up everything with Charity and Kevin. So he's approached her about sex. She's agreed to have sex with him that first night of the revival. When they would come home for the revival, he's getting undressed and he's trying to fill her up and all this. And she's like, oh, you know, it just feels strange that we scheduled it. You know, but each time they have this conversation about sex, she has this look of disgust on her face, even though she's, you know, whenever she's agreeing, she's not facing him. She's always looking away, so we can see her face and we can see how she really is not into it. So the next night at the revival, she's performed with Jabari, and I'm telling you, if I wasn't listening to the words, I would swear that they were, you know, singing and dancing to some secular song. Nothing that they did came off as worship. I have nothing wrong. You can talk about me being my theological box all you want, but I have no problem with contemporary music or contemporary artists that are radical for Christ. What I do have a problem with is when you're not honoring Christ. And what they were doing in their performance didn't honor Christ. It looked more seductive. It looked more, you know, she's winking at him. And it was almost as if she was treating him being Jabari, as her husband. And her husband was sitting out in the audience. And that didn't sit right with Kevin either. And so later after the revival, he confronts her about it, you know. And she emphatically denies there's anything going on with her and Jabari. And, you know, she says, you know, what you saw was performance. What you saw was us being in the Spirit. You may have been in the Spirit, Charity, but it wasn't the Holy Spirit, okay? So, you know, the next day he apologizes for the accusation. And she says, you know, you don't have to, but okay, thank you. And then that night, he again attempts to make love to his wife. And at this point, she's just honest with him and says, you know, it's not going to happen. This is over. And so they try to have discussion, or he inquires, how are we going to move forward now? And she says, we'll figure it out. But she's basically ended it. And I think basically she's ending it. Like I said, I see two sides of the story. He didn't have an outlet, and I thought Fortified Families was good for that, because it gave him an outlet to talk about his feelings and to really for him to figure out what he wanted. And I think that as a couple, because they were married, that she should have went to therapy with him. Not necessarily Fortified Families, but therapy. Where Fortified Families became dangerous and toxic and just ridiculous is with the reparative therapy that they wanted to use with the Ipecac syrup and having them drink it every time they have a wayward thought. Some days, if I sat up here and had to drink syrup for every wayward thought I had, I'd be sick as a dog. I mean, it's just like that. We are human beings. Things come into our minds. Things, I mean, yes, you pray. There are things that you can do to get them out of your head. But I think with Kevin, whether he is or is not gay, I think the suppression and the stigma of it, and the ideology of being everything a man is supposed to be. One of the things that I have had an interesting thought about is that if you remember when he was talking to Adrian about his feelings, but the fact that he hadn't done anything in season 1, is that he described how his father used to leave the house for long walks after dinner, and each walk got longer and longer until he just didn't come home anymore. And the fact that he just had a recent visit with his mother, and so when she wanted to get down to the nitty gritty of what was going on with her son, he didn't have to say the words because she already knew. So that made me wonder, since he kept on saying that he didn't want to be like his father, does he mean simply that he doesn't want to abandon his family, or he doesn't want to abandon his family for another man? Like, did this happen to his mother? Did his father have the same proclivities that Kevin has? And you know, Kevin hasn't acted upon it, and I do believe that he loves Charity with all his heart. He definitely loves his baby. I believe that. I also believe that he needs to figure out, you know, can he be happy in that scenario? Because I think that would be the issue for me if I were in Charity's boat. You know, you didn't wake up one day and just say, oh, I want to be with a man. You know, this was something that you've known for a while. And so she may feel that our whole relationship has been a farce because this has been something that you've been dealing with for a long time. And maybe that's why she feels like it's pointless to go to therapy or anything else. And, you know, right now she's really feeling Jabari. Now, I don't know if anything's taking place, but I know that she wants it to, and so does he. So, you know, that's going to be interesting to see in the next episode. Anyhow, I always feel like somebody's watching me is my next segment. And this basically describes Grace stalking Mac in actuality. I mean, last week she busted windows out of his car. This week it's like, you know, she's watching him, and he's on this date with a woman by the name of Lorraine. And the woman seems close to his age at least, but she still has the long hair and light skinned. And he gives her a kiss, and she gets in her car. He walks away, but Grace comes running from her car, knocking on the woman's windows, scaring the woman half to death. Like, she's like, "Hey, can I help you?" And you know, Grace tries to tell her about what Mac has done. And, you know, he hears the commotion. He comes back and he's demanding Grace to stop. And he's like, you know, I am trying to get on with my life. You just need to leave me alone. She said, that's not going to happen. And so the question is, has Grace gone too far? It's funny because her name is Grace, and that's something that she should be extending, but she's finding it difficult to do. In a situation, even though she has put a lot on the line and she's watching the victims being traumatized by it, you know, she feels like she needs to do something. She's fed up. She's angry that he's not in prison. But vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And it's hard to just tell somebody to pray about the situation when you feel like you're defeated. You did everything you were supposed to do to get him behind bars, but it didn't stick. And you mean he's never going to serve one day of time for his crimes. And that would be hard for any of us to accept. So I want to hear from you. Do you think Grace is lacking her ability to give grace to a man who has not asked for forgiveness or even shown remorse? And I think that's her biggest issue. He doesn't want to accept responsibility, accountability, and the fact that he doesn't have to be accountable for it because he made whatever deals that he made with the DA to be free. It's too much. And I think, you know, because she left it alone 20 years ago and then she came back with being challenged by Mavis to pursue him, and the fact that she did it and then he's still walking free, it makes me wonder if she's going to lose it, because I just knew that after she tried to warn Lorraine about Mac that she was going to get arrested. She didn't get arrested, but she did get a visit from the detectives, and they basically said, look, He doesn't want to practice charges because his concern for his sister, but stay off his block, leave him alone. You know, that's your warning. The episode ends where Grace is saying that she has a solution. So we need to find out what she tells the detectives. Alright, so Silver Bullet. Bishop confides in Pastor Jeffries. And Pastor Jeffries says, hey, my son deals with land zoning issues. Let me have him come here and weigh in on your situation, see how he can help. So sure enough, Aaron comes to the church and they go over what's happening at Triumph, and they make a determination that there is some type of flood line, that there's some new compliance, that the flood line, Calvary is on the same flood line but was not under the same restrictions or compliancy laws when it was built. So therefore they are fine. But any new property must adhere to these new laws. And the way to interrupt construction is to issue an injunction every 28 days, so that it would cause them to endure financial hardship or to give up altogether. Now, the way that works is you get permits for a certain period of time. And so if you get this injunction in the middle of one of those permits and that eats up time, and then there's another injunction that's eating up time, then you don't have time to act on those current permits, and you have to file for those permits again. That's additional money. Those permits are not cheap when you're building up property. Okay, so that's how they are planning to cause a financial hardship with Triumph to do that. So anyhow, the next episode, and to end the Silver Bullet, what happens is that Aaron decides that he can work for his clients remotely and stay in Memphis full time to until this is resolved. And so at the end of the episode, we see Lady Mae saying her goodbyes to Lionel, and then as they're saying their goodbyes, and you know, it's evident that there's still some tension between them, Bishop and Aaron come out of Calvary, and you know, Bishop's all excited because you know, Jeffrey came up with a great idea, and he says he can work remotely for his other clients and stay here and help us full time with this land zoning issue, and you know, yeah, he can stay in Jacob's quarters. And this is not something Lady Mae wanted, and of course, what can she say? But okay, so that's how that portion of the episode ends. The only thing that I have not discussed is the revive I Surrender All. So I Surrender All is the section I call about Sophia giving her life over to Christ, and she asked Pastor Rebecca, who she was sitting beside, if it was hard, and Pastor Rebecca said, no, not at all, I'll show you. And she walks her up to the altar, and you know, of course, her grandfather's there, and he's so happy, and Sophia says, I want to be baptized, and it's like instant baptism. You know, she's the first one in line to get baptized, and he baptizes her. And it was really, every time I watched this episode like 3 times, and I cry at the same point, because every time, you know, you see her get baptized and she comes up, she's all emotional, she's crying, and you know, when her mother, you know, after she gets dressed and she's talking to her mother was like, well, what was it like for you? And she said, I don't know how to describe it. She says, well, try. And she says, infinite. And you know, she's still reeling with emotion and what have you. So it was really a touching episode, but we already know that Sophia got the gift. Wherever Grace has put down her mantle, Sophia has picked that up, and she is going to be the new generation, the new breed of generation rising up, sold out for Christ, and the one to lead them. You know, as the Bible says, a child shall lead them. And I believe that Sophia is this child, and she is, you know, we see in the next episode, if you watch the preview, she's actually praying for Grace. So she said, let us pray. And I'm like, oh, you know, she's already, you know, coming into being about her father's business. So I'm excited about the possibilities of the directions this is going to go. But here's what I want to hear from you. Do you think there's enough evidence to say that they had an affair, and we just don't know how long, if it's still going on. We suspect that it probably isn't still going on because he lives in another state. However, we don't know that for sure. Anyway, do you think Pastor Lionel Jeffries is the father of Grace or Jacob? Another thing is, do you think Charity is fair in just giving up her marriage? Did she give up too soon? Do you believe, like I believe, that she should at least go to, I mean, it's a very complicated and delicate situation. It's hard to be black and white on how just to respond to that, you know, because I think it depends on the individuals and it depends on the people. But based upon, you know, marriage and what marriage is supposed to be about, I think both of them owe themselves going to therapy, if not as couples, as individuals, just to work out their feelings about the whole scenario, and so that they can learn how to co-parent together. Because it's going to be difficult if Charity winds up being with Jabari and what have you, because, you know, you can already see the sparks flying as they are. So tell me, what do you think? Do you think that Charity needed to give him more time? Do you think that they should go to therapy? What do you think? Weigh on that situation. We saw Jacob streaming the revival, and Clarissa saw him streaming, and he's like, I don't know why I'm watching this. And she said, I don't know why either. And she closed his laptop and took it from him. But do you think Jacob is missing being a part of Calvary? You know, he realizes, I think that Jacob realizes that he's not in the right place, but he just felt like he didn't have any choice. So tell me what you think. Adding comments. So this was an okay episode. I feel like it was a better building block to the other building blocks. But next episode is going to be very interesting. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.